Today, we're diving into an incredible story of unimaginable wealth, extreme arrogance, and a downfall that was, quite literally, earth-shattering. This is the tale of a man whose name became a legend for both his massive fortune and his spectacular ruin, a man named Qarun. So let me ask you a quick question. When you think of the richest person who ever lived, who comes to mind? Is it a tech billionaire from our time? Maybe an ancient king or emperor? Well, according to many historical and religious texts, there was one man whose wealth was so legendary it almost sounds like a fairy tale. Just try to wrap your head around this. We're not talking about the treasure itself. We're talking about just the keys to his treasure vaults. They were so heavy that it took a whole group of strong men just to carry them. I mean, if the keys alone were that much of a burden, can you even imagine the scale of the treasures they unlocked? But here's what makes this story so fascinating. It's not just about the gold. It's about the man. Because you see, before all the power, before the golden palaces, Qarun was known for something completely different. He was known for his piety. So, who was this guy really? Well, Qarun was actually a relative of the prophet Moses, and in his early days, he was a model citizen. Seriously, he was famous for his deep faith and his absolutely beautiful recitation of the Torah. People admired him so much, they gave him a special nickname, Al-Munawwar, which means the Enlightened One. He was seen as a spiritual guidepost for his community. Which leads us to the million-dollar question, or maybe the billion-dinar question in this case. How does a man known for being so enlightened and spiritual become the wealthiest person on Earth? Where on earth did all this gold come from? Well, there are a few theories that have been floating around for centuries. Some say he was just a brilliant, once-in-a-generation merchant. Others suggest something a bit more magical, that he was a master of alchemy, literally turning soil into gold. A more spiritual take is that he knew God's greatest name, the Isme Azam, and used that divine knowledge to ask for riches. But the theory that most scholars find most plausible is that Qarun had a unique and secret knowledge of geology. He knew how to find and pull gold from the earth like no one else, essentially cornering the entire market. And this, right here, is where the story takes a very dark turn. As Qarun's wealth exploded, his character began to implode. The man they once called the Enlightened One became completely blinded by the glare of his own riches. He started to believe that this massive fortune wasn't a blessing from God, but a direct result of his own genius, his own hard work. He completely forgot his humble beginnings and got swallowed up by this overwhelming pride, flaunting his wealth in the most extravagant ways you can think of. And when I say extravagant, I mean it. The details are just staggering. He didn't just own gold, he lived inside it. His clothes were literally woven from gold thread. And get this, in a pure display of arrogance, he would have his garments made extra long just so they would drag on the ground behind him. The doors to his palace, his chair, his bed, all solid gold. He would even stage these huge parades where mules carried nothing but the keys to his vaults, just to make sure everyone knew how rich he was. And this one quote, tells you everything you need to know about his mindset. When people would remind him that his wealth was a gift from God, that he should be thankful, Qarun would fire back with pure hubris. He'd say, "This is all mine because of my knowledge, my skill." He took every last bit of the credit. There was no room for humility, no room for gratitude. An ego that massive is bound to crash into something eventually. And for Qarun, he was on a direct collision course with the one person who represented everything he'd forgotten, his own kinsman, the prophet Moses. And this conflict was about to escalate into a truly devious plot. The flashpoint was zakat, the obligatory charity that's a core principle of faith. When Moses delivered God's command that the wealthy had to give a portion of their fortune to help the poor, Qarun was absolutely outraged. To him, the very idea of giving away even a tiny fraction of his wealth was just unthinkable. So he decided to get rid of the problem at its source. But instead of confronting Moses directly, he cooked up a nasty scheme to destroy the prophet's reputation. He bribed a woman with a mind-boggling amount of money, 1,000 gold coins and a plate of solid gold, and instructed her to stand up in front of the whole community and publicly accuse Moses of a terrible sin. He figured that would discredit him for good. But here's what Qarun completely failed to account for in his evil little plan: the power of truth and divine intervention. His carefully laid trap was about to spring back and catch him in the most terrifying way imaginable. So in front of everyone, Qarun springs his trap. But when Moses calls upon the woman to speak, she's suddenly overcome by the fear of God. She breaks down and confesses everything: the bribe, the plot, the whole lie. In a single moment, Qarun's treachery is laid bare for everyone to see. Now, you'd think he'd be humiliated, right? But no. Qarun is furious, and he refuses to back down. This is the last straw for Moses. Pushed to his absolute limit by this betrayal, he makes a powerful and unusual prayer. He doesn't ask for Qarun to be struck by lightning or to fall ill. He asks for something much more profound. He asks God to command the very earth beneath their feet to obey him. And God answers the prayer. The ground beneath Qarun's feet softens, and he begins to sink. First, it's up to his ankles. Then it rises to his knees. He starts screaming for mercy, but it is far too late. The earth continues to rise, swallowing him up to his shoulders, until finally, he, his golden palace, and every last piece of his legendary treasure are pulled down into the earth, vanishing without a trace. For centuries, people have been absolutely obsessed with finding Qarun's lost gold. But the story's real value, its true treasure, isn't something buried under the sand. It's in the lessons it leaves behind for all of us. You know, for ages, people have pointed to places like Lake Qarun in Egypt, thinking that's the spot. But it turns out, that's a myth. The name Qarun, in this case, doesn't even refer to the man. It comes from the Arabic word for canals, Qarun. The archaeological evidence is pretty clear. The physical treasure is gone, and honestly, searching for it kind of misses the whole point of the story anyway. The real takeaways here are timeless. Qarun's fall is a huge warning that arrogance is the fastest road to ruin. It shows us that all our worldly possessions are temporary and can't save us when it really counts. It's a powerful reminder that true success isn't measured in gold, but in gratitude and humility. And maybe most importantly, that the duty of those who have wealth is to take care of those who don't. And that leaves us with one final lingering question. This might be an ancient tale, but its themes are so modern, it's almost scary. It forces us to look around today and ask, who are the modern figures who value personal gain over the public good? Who credits all their success to their own genius and forgets their responsibility to others? Who are the Qaruns of our time?